We're good. So thanks for being here tonight. We have the pleasure of having Jim Barnes from Esponte Technology. He's the Director of Technology Solutions. And Jim currently manages the consulting practice for Esponte. He comes to us with a long history of working with WebSphere and WebSphere portal products. While at IBM, he was a level 3 team lead for Commerce on the Cloud and a manager of the Portal Level 2 support team. Additionally, he was a team lead for the Portal API team, assisting customers with custom projects utilizing the WebSphere Portal API. He also has extensive experience working with the infrastructure side of WebSphere. In total, Jim brings over 19 years of experience to the team. And Jim holds numerous certifications, including Oracle Certified Professional, Java SE 6 Programmer, and IBM Certified Solution Developer for WebSphere Portal version 7.0 and 8.5. Over the years, Jim has authored several blogs and white papers on the cloud, big data, and WebSphere Portal. He was recognized with a Contributing Author Award to IBM's Developer Works site. He has experience in numerous fields, including manufacturing, insurance, telecommunications, and healthcare. His experience has covered everything from working on the mainframe to the largest browser-based technologies. He currently holds a BS degree in Applied Economics from Virginia Tech. He comes from Pennsylvania and keeps moving south over time, and I understand that one. Currently, he lives in Creedmoor with his wife, son, a 12-year-old albino corn snake. Wow, and one cat. So please welcome him. Let's give him a little bit of applause.
All right, welcome everybody. If you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead.
Right side.
Oh, right side, right there.
Oh.
Obviously, I have a problem with
There we
the
go.
side.
This,
Oh, that's okay.
and you can go the other side, back up.
All right, so just trying to be a little funny here. Past present analytics. We'll go over a little bit about my past, how I think it's contributed to where I am now, and look at some of the stuff that my company is doing with analytics and where I see the growth coming as far as at least what we're focused on. Like I said, we'll do some background, some education, some funny things along with education, some of the stuff that we're doing now with analytics. It's kind of the same thing we're doing 20 years ago. We're just applying new processes and working, of course, with much bigger data than we were back then. We'll look at some of my experience and I'll talk about what I currently do as a Director of Technology Solutions at Esponte, and then where I see the growth with myself and analytics as well as for the company and for the field. So I come from a small town in Pennsylvania. Like I said, it's a one-stoplight town. You see this pretty quaint little town here. There's not a whole lot going on in it. It was a nice town that we grew up in there. I originally thought I was going to be a farmer. Not a lot of analytics in that field then, but nowadays you'd be surprised. Some of the most successful farmers in the area when I was growing up, they had all the cows tagged. They could tell you how many pounds of milk they gave a day, and they were plotting how much feed they were taking. That's just the beginning of where, I saw big data coming into, my life when looking at that kind of stuff and seeing how they were utilizing it and using it to make judgments about, when to put a cow out to pasture, so to speak, or to, invest in and see how well they were doing about coming back into being pregnant. Well, I was allergic to hay. So this didn't really work out to be a farmer, so I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. And I went to Virginia Tech because I wanted to be a veterinarian. How I thought I was going to be a veterinarian for the next pretty much 15 years of my life. I was also in Boy Scouts growing up. I was an Eagle and also a Vigil Honor member. So did a lot of volunteer work as a kid. So I went to Virginia Tech, like I said. I knew I was going to be a veterinarian. But I knew I didn't want to just do biology or something like that. So I took agriculture and applied economics. And where this really comes into the key here is that a lot of this goes into small business management, but also looking at big data sets. We do a lot of price analysis in applied economics and helping farmers make decisions about buying price futures. And it was interesting when I came out and back in the fall, and we had a thing, looked at some of the things some of the students did. It was the same kind of stuff we were doing 20 years ago, but of course much bigger data sets. We used Excel, and we never ran into the problems you guys are running into with the running out of memory or anything like that, or hitting the ceiling limit on the number of rows. But we're doing the same kind of thing. You're taking data, you're looking at, how much rain did it rain in the past 70 years, what was corn, and what was pork, and all these other things, and how they affected the price of either cattle on the hoof or cattle, boxed up and ready to sell. And we were doing that. We would use that kind of data to tell the farmers in Virginia, because they would come and be like, should I buy futures this year or not? And this would help them make sure they got a decent price for their, their corn and beef or whatnot. And it was a big way that we were using, kind of analytics at the time to help them be better, successful farmers. But like I said, I thought I was going to do veterinary. Thought it for the entire time I was there at Tech until the last semester. So I'm taking all these, ag econ classes, learning all about, macro and microeconomics and stuff like that. Well, I started working for a company called PTI. It said Personal Technology Innovation or something like that. I can't remember. Started there in '96. I originally just wanted to be an office assistant, but they saw my website. Of course, this is HTML 1.0, and I was like, oh yeah? They're like, we want to do web design for us. I'm like, alrighty. So I just kind of started doing there, and I was doing, back to those all hand coding days, or new generation. JavaScript was basically there to make mouse servers. So that's all it was. There wasn't a lot of fancy stuff like that. But I was doing that. I was building computers for them, and I was doing instruction for them. We did a little bit with, looking at, back then we just called it mentoring. We just wanted to see where everybody was going. Now we'll talk more about how we're using web analytics, but back then it was, we just wanted to see what pages people were coming to visit, what they were doing, and how long they were staying, and see, basically we just wanted them to be up higher. But it was kind of the beginning of analytics on the web. And you can see how from there, as we continue to grow, how much important that is and how much it drives things like spending and stuff like that. So some of my experience, I've been with IBM since '99. I joined straight out of college at Tech because I thought I was going to be veterinary. Luckily, they gave me a job even though I had an econ degree. With them, I was doing data warehousing, which kind of fit right along with that analytics. And that was kind of IBM's first foray into trying to help customers come to grips with all the data they had. And at the time, they called it online analytical processing, and it was a way to basically take big data sets and make nice pivot tables out of them. And that was IBM's first foray. Well, unfortunately, this is 1999. If anybody remembers, Y2K was back then. Nobody wanted to buy a data warehouse in '99. So after being with my group and set up for 7 months, they said, yeah, we overshot our numbers. Everybody's looking for a new job. And I was like, so then I went over to Lucent and I worked over at Greensboro through to the end of 2003. And that's where I got a lot of my mainframe experience. Now, you want to talk about big numbers. Working on the mainframe, those things would churn through some nightly amount of numbers. And at the time, Lucent was doing great business selling their optical switches all over the world. And most of what I was doing was international invoicing. So a lot of fun, a lot of numbers to work with. Then I joined the software group, and this is where I started first with Portal. And this is where I got back into doing web analytics. At the time, we were still using pretty generic site visits and seeing what they were doing. It was pretty, clicking on different parts of the page and stuff like that. Then the USDA. This is where things started to get very interesting. USDA, when I first joined there, they had every different district of forest had a different website. And this guy over here up in the George Washington National Forest in Virginia, he decided he wanted to do it on Linux. Well, the guy out in out west, he's like, no, Microsoft all the way. And this guy over here somehow got hold of an AIX machine, and he did it that way. So our job was to take these all together and somehow find out a way to merge all their content, tag it, and make it so that it's searchable by their customers. Nobody wanted to do that because that meant a lot of jobs were being lost, but thereby saving us tax dollars. So it was good for one thing, but not good for other things. So it was a very difficult project I worked on, but it allowed us to gather all this data because a lot of these maps that they had a lot of data points for hiking trails and stuff like that, and we had to have that searchable and tagged and all this information that wasn't there. We had to bring it all together. I joined that like for a short period of time, and I thought I wanted to move back north. My wife and I were wrong, so we moved back to the south, and I came back to IBM. So then I joined back with the software group with Portal, and getting more into the analytics. And this is where I started my forays into big data and looking at that. And then in 2011, I switched to commerce. And this is where we started using core metrics, which was a big one. That's what I'm still using. That's their big thing for doing web analytics is core metrics. Now, it is very huge in commerce because you want to see how long do people stay on the page, where's your traffic coming from, and who's generating. And it's been some interesting data in the past couple of years. If you look at the amount of mobile traffic that has been increasing, especially on Black Friday, and whatever they call the Saturday now. I know they gave it a name for the Saturday, I can't remember. But just looking at the amount of data that's being generated by the hits, we were having to increase our customers' workload by about 25 to 30% to be able to handle all the additional traffic each year. So the past couple of years, I worked with JCPenney, looking at their, all their site visits and stuff like that, to track it to see what the trend was going to be for the next year. And a lot of times people are just going, hey, what do we do? What's the price here? I'm at Target, I'm looking there. And they were looking at doing geolocation with it as well to see where the people were coming from. So they could figure out, are they near our stores or are they in our stores? Are they not, or, what's going on? Who's driving the traffic or where's it coming from? So after that, I was working with New Rubber Band. They were doing similar stuff. And then the project I was working on kind of got shoved off to business partners, and that's when I joined Esponte. And they're the Director of Technology Solutions. It's a nice fancy title for a meeting. I just tell a lot of people what to do, and I come up with what we're going to work on for the year. So a lot of that is what we call so-called thought leadership. Thinking about what we're going to expand in and where we're going to target. And hopefully I make the right guesses so that we make money. If not, that's a problem, right? So I do a lot of mentoring for our new folks. A lot of things we're looking at right now are content and predictive analytics. The big thing right now with websites is reducing the navigational burden of your users. How do you get them the content they want as fast as possible? We don't care how long they stay anymore. We want them to be happy with their visit because they'll keep talking about it on social media and get other people to come back. This is very interesting for one of the things we're looking at with, we work with National Government Services. They own most of the Midwest region for doing healthcare.gov and the Medicare stuff. So we just got done rolling out their website, and part of what we're looking at is how to bring their, combine their 4C results. I don't know if you see certain websites, you'll see 4C, it'll ask you to fill out a survey. How do we take that data along with forum postings and stuff like that, along with their web analytics data, and merge that all together to actionable data. Because one of the things is, if they have a certain happiness ratio, they get a couple $1 million extra from the U.S. government providing a good solution. And if they don't, they lose that money. And so they don't want to lose that money, they want that money, of course. So a lot of that will be working. We just rolled the site. The surveys have gone up for the piece we've changed, but we need to be predictive. And what we want to do is make sure, because there's a lot of content now in Medicare. And if any of you are aware or been through, there's a lot of manuals for both the customers and the suppliers. And the thing is, we want to get them that data as soon as possible. And it's one thing for a supplier that knows the keywords that they need to go, but how do you get the person that doesn't know? How do you get them to the content they need to know the fastest? So that's where we're looking at using predictive analytics to be able to say, well, other people were looking for the same kind of keywords, these are what they wanted, and give them those results ahead of time without having to make them wait for, a search through 5 pages, but get them to them fast. Be like, hey, we think your searches matches the other people's searches. What do you think to that? And that's where we really see a lot of our growth is in predictive analytics, reducing the navigational burden. Then the part is web analytics, as well as helping them take all their feedback and stuff like that, make it into where do we focus our content? Where do we focus what we're going to spend our money on within our company? Because a lot of times they need to know. I mean, if people are spending 10 minutes on a page, that might be that information is really important. Or it could be it's not clear, or it could be that, people are bored. Who knows? But what we try to do is try to make reasonable assumptions based upon four postings, the 4 C results, what we see from web analytics, and anything we can find from social media. And then we figure out how to sell that. So that's where we make a lot of our money is selling the solutions to our customers. The other thing we're starting to do is a lot of these government agencies have a need to catalog all this data so they can go back to an X date and be able to say, this is exactly what our website looked like. And we have to be able to tag that with enough data so that we can accurately search for it and show how things changed over time. So we're calling it, you've probably seen the Wayback Machine and the stuff like that on the internet. We're trying to figure out how to do that so we can go to a certain, meet the government restrictions and requirements for data retention. We're also exploring emerging trends. We're looking at IBM we're an IBM business partner. I don't know if you can see that little thing down behind me. So we use most of the IBM stuff because we do get it for free as a business partner. Of course, we sell it to our customers, but we're looking at IBM's Infosphere, which is a Hadoop engine, and we're looking at using that for being the basis for a lot of our stuff. Now, the other thing I help do is trying to turn our president's why and how we're going to do it. And so, a lot of why we do things is we want to do it better and faster than our competition. And we believe we can do it better and faster than our competition, and we can provide a better solution that's forward thinking. Part of that is being mobile first. And we're looking at, if you look at talking about the web analytics, if you look at it, a lot of the traffic is now going to non-PC device. And so even saying mobile first now isn't really the right word anymore. It's non-PC device. Because how many of you have tablets? A lot of tablets, a lot of smartphones. You're looking at this stuff not on your PC anymore, right? I mean, how do we get those things captured, and how do we make sure that those pages are good viewing for the customers? So that's a lot of what we're doing. Now, like I said, talked about our portfolio growth, content analytics, reducing navigational burden is the keyest thing. Even we look at our UI, we look at our what we can do, and this is a lot of what IBM's putting their money into with core metrics and content analytics. Their Watson search analytics. If you've one of their new products is using Watson with OmniFind, which is their enterprise search. They want to make it so that even if you didn't even put in the right words, we know other people found it because they use those words. We want to get you the content. We don't want you to have to dig for it because that's not the point of the content. I mean, the content does nobody any good if nobody can find it. So using, I don't know, is everybody familiar with Watson, heard of Watson? It's pretty interesting if you have heard of it. It's pretty interesting how they actually teach it. They don't program it so much as they teach it. So whatever they did for Jeopardy, they actually read in all this information. It actually teaches itself as it goes. It's not you don't just code a program. They actually have a piece where they read in data, read in information to it to help it learn. And that's how they got ready for Jeopardy. That's how they get ready for one of the big things they want to do with it is, looking at the predictive analytics for healthcare. I don't know how this is going to work. I still think people might be scared of it, but they've been able to sense that around 98% of the things get approved by insurance companies. Well, if 98% of them are getting approved anyways, go ahead and have Watson approve them for them. And it can make the assumptions go, well, we've approved, we read all the data for past approvals. Let me go ahead and make that assumption based upon all that data I have. The trend says it's going to go this way. I'm just going to go ahead and approve these and take RNs and other people that are having to prove these now, get them doing something besides paperwork, because having an RN or having a doctor approve these, that's not a good use of their time, for the 98% that we're going to approve anyways. They're trained professionals. They should be doing something more with their time. So that's one of the goals of Watson is training them to do that. Training Watson to make those right calls. Now, of course, the appeals will go through a person who would be just dealing with the machine all the time. But there is a process to help reduce that burden on people and get, using all that big data, using all that stuff from all the past decisions to provide new solutions. So web analytics, I'll talk about that. Social feedback, survey feedback. Back when I started on the web, there wasn't much social stuff, right? I mean, there was, you might have a little web blog, you left something, but it isn't like it is now. So what is really the biggest thing is how do you combine it into actionable data? And that's where data cleanliness comes in. How do you cleanse that data, make it into actionable data? And that's part of what, we hope to sell is making that data into something, looking off keywords within the post, looking off the information we see, that we're able to see, translating the word like your website sucks into, hey, that's a 0, or your website is awesome, or whatever it might be, or someone says, for just Medicare says, hey, I couldn't find anything, it stinks. Okay, maybe that's a 4 out of 10, or whatever it might be. But using that to help us make the right decisions, because a lot of times now people are reluctant to fill out surveys where they're more likely to go on social media. And that non-conventional data, non-structured data is where we're seeing a lot of our return. And one of the things we're also looking at is how do we do that for companies like Staples, or other companies like that to do a lot of online selling, who people might not comment on the review sections on their websites, but how do we make that into actionable data for them for their products elsewhere? Even if it's not even mentioned that Staples, that product, they might be able to say, hey, these people are talking about this product, we sell a similar product, how do you want to market it better? Or, what's wrong with it? Maybe you don't want to carry it at all. Let's focus on stuff that people really want. I don't know, the pen leaks every time. Well, let's get rid of the pen. But if you're not getting that feedback, people are going to your website, they're just completely online. You don't know that. Sometimes, or maybe they're going to BIC and writing BIC, and BIC sends them back stuff, but you never hear about it. But it's no good for you to carry something that, BIC keeps getting returns on, and you keep having to stock. So as far as personal growth around analytics, when I see stuff going on, continuing certifications, self-training, one of the things I definitely recommend is head first looks if you're interested, for any of the things like that for job development or anything like that. So it makes it really good selection of books for doing self-training. The big thing I recommend with learning anything is give yourself a project. Determine something you want to do. And it's one thing to be like, I want to review grades, I want a job, I want to do something with the analytics. Give yourself a project. I think if you're supposed to some of your folks are giving some products before, that's the biggest way to learn a new technology. Is give yourself a project. Give yourself something to do. I know one time when I was trying to run struts whenever it first came out, I made myself a checkout for my movie collection. So I gave me I could check out movies and I love to friends. It was something that really let me learn the technology in a way that might be usable for Blockbuster or something like that. Something similar other companies would do, and not just hey, we want you to code a food that does this, actually the actionable stuff. So whenever we were thinking about the projects and we looked at it, in your classes, definitely learn how customers want to run business and how they can make this just like sellable. As far as education, we're going to see myself going forward for certificates, like I said, and MBA program, helping with analytics. So any questions?
So looking at different job recs just across various industries, not one specific industry, it feels like when I read skill sets and requirements needed, they are throwing everything but the kitchen sink, because it feels like the employer doesn't necessarily know what they want. So, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You can look at it as, okay, it's a 9-hour job, or B, I'm going to be a colossal failure because they don't know what they want. Do you have a recommendation for a resource around how to help that interview process or help that employer really calm down, hey, here's what I can do based on what's in the job rec?
Well, definitely a couple other I mean, that's one of the key things is that I know when I'm hiring folks, I know a lot of people don't cover letters anymore. And if there's something questionable or something in the resume, we do it. Okay, but we didn't take the time to address it, right? You know, the biggest thing, and this is something I'm trying to, we're doing in our company, is we're going more for the individual and what they can bring to the company, not what skill they have. Now, if we need a job developer, that's what you patch a job. But if you have the right how, why, you know, and attitude, we make a decision for you. You know, that's one of the things. Now, I'm not totally answer your question, but for the companies that are having cover letters and key way, because a lot of times, especially for big companies, what happens, and I can tell you when I worked at IBM, we give a rec to the HR person, and then they start writing stuff. And I'm like, you know, where did this come from? I don't even know what you did. I was like, that's not the stuff we need. So, a lot of times, you know, there's, HR tries to use this as an artificial barrier to entry to weed out people. So, the ways to deal with it are definitely don't lie on a resume. You know, because that's easy to call out. But, you know, definitely in a cover letter, make sure to address those points. Be like, you know, you had the library. This is what I can do for you. This is the experience I've had, and this is the result I've shown. And that's a good way to get around those HR, you know, people that might trim you out based upon that stuff. Now, if they're doing it, you know, heuristically, the program, it's hard to get around those. Then, you know, networking, that's just the best way to get around those. You know. But not much I can do about the heuristic ones that, you know, look for it. If you have these 10 keywords that you're not, no, you do not have these 10 keywords you're not. That's just, unfortunately, that's what it is. Yeah. Now, I will say we're currently working on a product and we're probably going to be something within the next 2 to 3 weeks to help us in the future. So, you know, one of the things as we move forward to this year, definitely think we're going to have a role for somebody that knows techniques and helps us put stuff together. So,
you heard it here first.
yeah.
Right?
But another comment to the whole idea of these job postings asking for everything. It has determined that they're basically looking for you. Right? They're looking for people and skill set that do not exist. But if there are 3 or 4 people in the world that actually can do it, likelihood that would be interested in from skill is somewhat small.
Yeah.
Right? So that's an administration part, I think, and an awareness. I think HR basically have no clue.
Yeah.
And particularly in this field, and part of it, it moves so fast as well that it ends up with, you know, this scrape the current set of buzzwords and throw it into something, and then hope to find a new one.
It was, so I remember, it was around 2005 I was looking for a job, and I had been a job for a long time. They asked for someone with 15 years experience. 2005, the only 3 people that had it were people that wrote it. I don't know what you want to do. You know, that's the kind of thing. The best thing to do is just lie, write a cover letter, try to get about it, and do that. But I agree, they don't just put it there, they don't have a clue. You know, if they have a place that doesn't, like, you can actually call a recruiter, you know, they're not just accepting, you can actually call it. Depending on the size, you don't get home with the recruiter, talk to them. Especially recruiting fairs, those are great resources to get around some of this stuff. Like, hey, I saw this, I can do this for you, but you do all this stuff in here, I don't have all this skills, but I can do some of it, and I think it'd be a great asset. Those are good ways to get around those.
This is an analytics project waiting to happen. You can imagine if you actually get into the HR development idea, and you actually have those resumes and things here, because that's the most imperfect market. Right?
It is.
Market.
It's so difficult to match what the need qualified. You know, so that one is very directly another question I had. Because a lot of what you were kind of hinting at is unstructured, semi-structured, basically text-based data, right? And how strong you see that, you know, the need for being able to deal with that in the, you know, as we move forward.
I think the cloud, especially with, social media, and big area where you call data from, especially for, website stuff. I think it's being able to deal with that unstructured data, making it something actionable, is a very hard thing. And I don't see it changing. I never tried to struggle with it, and continue to struggle with it. I think everybody does, right? I mean, it's, how do you change that and make a smart decision based upon that data?
And it's actually referred to, right? This is typically we will call text analytics, where instead we have variables, say there's one symbol, that kind of stuff. You throw in web posts, or you throw in tweets, or you throw in that kind of stuff. Now you have to do things with those. The reason I'm mentioning it is we actually had a little project, one of our advanced classes, where they document class. And then it was interesting that the students enjoyed that. And for me, for us, it's very useful to hear the importance of the different kinds of technologies. Basically, pretty the speeches were made by Obama or Romney.
Any other questions?
Well, just text analytics piece that you were just asking about, is that the IBM software you're using for that? Can you maybe talk a little bit more about the software languages?
Technologies.
Yeah, so we've just started our investigation in this area. So that's the reason why I think we're going to need someone. We need some help guys on this. We already looked at as being vision, and we're not sure what we're going to use as the collector, the aggregator for the data. We looked at it's called Mooch, which is a Java-based crawler to help us crawl different stuff. It's open source, so we looked at that. But the crawling, as far as the processing, we haven't gotten that far yet. We've looked at I know the district has some work streams that you can take advantage of. We just haven't done it yet. So we're hoping that we can sell this vision to the customer and then use it to help fund the development. So. You gotta sell this somewhere.
What software were you using doing the analysis for the JCPenney's and all that, looking at future trends?
So we were using, they're using Coremetrics, and mostly I got the reports for those. We were generating Coremetrics and then online analytics. I don't know where they provided to us, they just provide us reports and we use them to go back to them. And I was helping more with the tuning of the environment and beefing up and getting it ready and doing the stress tests on the system in that case. But I would take it in and Coremetrics generate for us, take it to our college customers and help them get ready for the Black Friday. So if anyone is interested, I proceed this year. We're going to need somebody with analytics experience to help us with as we move forward, because this is part of our plans for 2015 to move into doing more of the analytics for our customers. Because they have the need, we need to fill it. So.
And our programs, we're starting consulting with companies now as well. And so we can certainly provide that service to you. So, yeah. I know there's a few students who've been interested in in sentiment analysis and all that. So we have a few who are interested in that. Yeah.
So yeah, we're basically, we have our main office here in Cary. It's just off of the tradition where that is. So a lot of our folks are remote, so there's none of us here in Cary. And then the rest of us are scattered around the country. Our official headquarters is in Florida, but our own office is here in Cary. So, we have 2 conferences coming up where we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff to get ready for our customers.
Is there I know I've been looking for maybe an internship opportunity. I'm not really at that point where I'm going to, be able to do stuff like text analytics, but I'd like to get involved in the field somehow, some way. Is there any internship opportunity you can suggest there?
We've got to talk about it. It's something we want to do. So I know as we get closer on this one project can't discuss too much because it's under an NDA right now. We'll be happy for that, and so we do deliver you some insurance for helping with that project.
Great.
So. Any other questions? I know, I really got a big conference up there coming up for there. So I have to look up the name, but they have like 8 conferences together about different things. So if you're interested, I mean, let's have a conference coming up. It gets the hashtag and some of the stuff that people are tweeting about it. They just had an interconnect, which is really good. They're talking about some new stuff in there. Exceptional digital experiences we focus on, as well as college. And then there's I think they're with purpose here coming up here. So definitely stay on that, see the people that are talking about it, and start networking with those folks and see if you can get in. I know a lot of black belt that I did SWIP, I was able to move around because I did something socially, and was able to work with 6 jobs that I did.
We'll be having a career fair meeting. I'd like to invite you to that, and we'll have students be and presenting themselves with the rest.
All right, I did have some cards here, probably wants to pick some up. I don't know if I have enough for everybody, but these cards. Any other questions?
I think that was very informative. Great, well, thank you so much.